35. The Apostha and Patimokkha. When Seniya Bimbisra, the king of Magadha, was advanced in years, he retired from the world and led a religious life. He observed that there were Brahmanical sects in Rajgraha keeping sacred certain days, and the people went to their meeting houses and listened to their sermons concerning the need of keeping regular days for retirement from worldly labors and religious instruction. The king went to the Blessed One and said, "The Parivrajak, who belong to the Tithya school, prosper and gain adherents because they keep the 8th day and also the 14th or 15th day of each half month. Would it not be advisable for the reverend brethren of the Sangha also to assemble on days duly appointed for that purpose?" And the Blessed One commanded the bhikkhus to assemble on the 8th day and also on the 14th or 15th day of each half month, and to devote these days to religious exercises. A bhikkhu duly appointed should address the congregation and expound the Dharma. He should exhort the people to walk in the eightfold path of righteousness. He should comfort them in the vicissitudes of life and gladden them with the bliss of the fruit of good deeds. Thus the brethren should keep the Apostha. Now the bhikkhus, in obedience to the rule laid down by the Blessed One, assembled in the vihar on the day appointed, and the people went to hear the Dharma, but they were greatly disappointed, for the bhikkhus remained silent and delivered no discourse. When the Blessed One heard of it, he ordered the bhikkhus to recite the Patimokkha, which is a ceremony of disburdening the conscience, and he commanded them to make confession of their trespasses so as to receive the absolution of the order. A fault, if there be one, should be confessed by the bhikkhu who remembers it and desires to be cleansed. For a fault, when confessed, shall be light on him. And the Blessed One said, the Patimokkha must be recited in this way. Let a competent and venerable bhikkhu make the following proclamation to the Sangha: May the Sangha hear me. Today is Apostha, the 8th, or the 14th or 15th day of the half month. If the Sangha is ready, let the Sangha hold the Apostha service and recite the Patimokkha. I will recite the Patimokkha. And the bhikkhus shall reply, we hear it well and we concentrate well our minds on it, all of us. Then the officiating bhikkhu shall continue, let him who has committed an offense, confess it. If there be no offense, let all remain silent. From your being silent I shall understand that the reverend brethren are free from offences. As a single person who has been asked a question answers it, so also, if before an assembly like this a question is solemnly proclaimed 3 times, an answer is expected. If a bhikkhu, after a 3-fold proclamation, does not confess an existing offense which he remembers, he commits an intentional falsehood. Now, reverend brethren, an intentional falsehood has been declared an impediment by the Blessed One. Therefore, if an offense has been committed by a bhikkhu who remembers it and desires to become pure, the offense should be confessed by the bhikkhu, and when it has been confessed, it is treated duly. 36. The schism. While the Blessed One dwelt at Kosambi, a certain bhikkhu was accused of having committed an offense, and, as he refused to acknowledge it, the Brotherhood pronounced against him the sentence of expulsion. Now, that bhikkhu was erudite. He knew the Dharma, had studied the rules of the order, and was wise, learned, intelligent, modest, conscientious, and ready to submit himself to discipline. And he went to his companions and friends among the bhikkhus, saying, "This is no offense, friends, this is no reason for a sentence of expulsion. I am not guilty. The verdict is unconstitutional and invalid. Therefore I consider myself still as a member of the order. May the venerable brethren assist me in maintaining my right." Those who sided with the expelled brother went to the bhikkhus who had pronounced the sentence, saying, "This is no offense." While the bhikkhus who had pronounced the sentence replied, "This is an offense." Thus altercations and quarrels arose, and the Sangha was divided into two parties, reviling and slandering each other. And all these happenings were reported to the Blessed One. Then the Blessed One went to the place where the bhikkhus were, who had pronounced the sentence of expulsion, and said to them, "Do not think, O bhikkhus, that you are to pronounce expulsion against a bhikkhu, whatever be the facts of the case, simply by saying, 'It occurs to us that it is so, and therefore we are pleased to proceed thus against our brother.' Let those bhikkhus who frivolously pronounce a sentence against a brother who knows the Dharma and the rules of the order, who is learned, wise, intelligent, modest, conscientious, and ready to submit himself to discipline, stand in awe of causing divisions. They must not pronounce a sentence of expulsion against a brother merely because he refuses to see his offense." Then the Blessed One rose and went to the brethren who sided with the expelled brother and said to them, "Do not think, O bhikkhus, that if you have given offense you need not atone for it, thinking, 'We are without offense.' When a bhikkhu has committed an offense, which he considers no offense while the brotherhood consider him guilty, he should think, 'These brethren know the Dharma and the rules of the order, they are learned, wise, intelligent, modest, conscientious, and ready to submit themselves to discipline. It is impossible that they should on my account act with selfishness or in malice or in delusion or in fear. Let him stand in awe of causing divisions, and rather acknowledge his offense on the authority of his brethren." Both parties continued to keep aposathya and perform official acts independently of one another, and when their doings were related to the Blessed One, he ruled that the keeping of aposathya and the performance of official acts were lawful, unobjectionable, and valid for both parties. For he said, the bhikkhus who side with the expelled brother form a different communion from those who pronounced the sentence. There are venerable brethren in both parties. As they do not agree, let them keep aposathya and perform official acts separately." And the Blessed One reprimanded the quarrelsome bhikkhus saying to them, "Loud is the voice which worldlings make, but how can they be blamed when divisions arise also in the Sangha. Hatred is not appeased in those who think, he has reviled me, he has wronged me, he has injured me. For not by hatred is hatred appeased. Hatred is appeased by not hatred. This is an eternal law. There are some who do not know the need of self-restraint. If they are quarrelsome, we may excuse their behavior. But those who know better should learn to live in concord. If a man finds a wise friend who lives righteously and is constant in his character, he may live with him, overcoming all dangers, happy and mindful. But if he finds not a friend who lives righteously and is constant in his character, let him rather walk alone, like a king who leaves his empire and the cares of government behind him to lead a life of retirement like a lonely elephant in the forest. With fools there is no companionship. Rather than to live with men who are selfish, vain, quarrelsome, and obstinate, let a man walk alone. And the Blessed One thought to himself, it is no easy task to instruct these headstrong and infatuate fools. And he rose from his seat and went away. 37. The re-establishment of concord. Whilst the dispute between the parties was not yet settled, the Blessed One left Kozambi, and wandering from place to place he came at last to Savatthi. And in the absence of the Blessed One the quarrels grew worse, so that the devotees of Kozambi became annoyed, and they said, these quarrelsome monks are a great nuisance and will bring upon us misfortunes. Worried by their altercations, the Blessed One is gone, and has selected another abode for his residence. Let us, therefore, neither salute the bhikkhus nor support them. They are not worthy of wearing yellow robes, and must either propitiate the Blessed One, or return to the world. And the bhikkhus of Kozambi, when no longer honored and no longer supported by the lay devotees, began to repent and said, let us go to the Blessed One and let him settle the question of our disagreement. And both parties went to Savatthi to the Blessed One. And the Venerable Sariput, having heard of their arrival, addressed the Blessed One and said, these contentious, disputatious, and quarrelsome bhikkhus of Kozambi, the authors of dissensions, have come to Savatthi. How am I to behave, O Lord, toward those bhikkhus? Do not reprove them, Sariput, said the Blessed One, for harsh words do not serve as a remedy and are pleasant to no one. Assign separate dwelling places to each party and treat them with impartial justice. Listen with patience to both parties. He alone who weighs both sides is called a muni. When both parties have presented their case, let the Sangha come to an agreement and declare the re-establishment of concord. And Pujapati, the matron, asked the Blessed One for advice, and the Blessed One said, let both parties enjoy the gifts of lay members, be they robes or food, as they may need, and let no one receive any noticeable preference over any other. And the Venerable Uppali, having approached the Blessed One, asked concerning the re-establishment of peace in the Sangha, would it be right, O Lord, said he, that the Sangha to avoid further disputations, should declare the restoration of concord without inquiring into the matter of the quarrel. And the Blessed One said, if the Sangha declares the re-establishment of concord without having inquired into the matter, the declaration is neither right nor lawful. There are two ways of re-establishing concord, one is in the letter, and the other one is in the spirit and in the letter. If the Sangha declares the re-establishment of concord without having inquired into the matter, the peace is concluded in the letter only. But if the Sangha, having inquired into the matter, and having gone to the bottom of it, decides to declare the re-establishment of concord, the peace is concluded in the spirit, and also in the letter. The concord re-established in the spirit and in the letter is alone right and lawful. And the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus and told them the story of Prince Dinghavu, the long-lived. He said, in former times, there lived at Benares a powerful king whose name was Brahmadatta of Kasi, and he went to war against Digiti, the long-suffering, a king of Kosala, for he thought, the kingdom of Kosala is small and Digiti will not be able to resist my armies. And Digiti, seeing that resistance was impossible against the great host of the king of Kasi, fled, leaving his little kingdom in the hands of Brahmadatta, and having wandered from place to place, he came at last to Benares, and lived there with his consort in a potter's dwelling outside the town. And the queen bore him a son and they called him Dinghavu. When Dinghavu had grown up, the king thought to himself, King Brahmadatta has done us great harm, and he is fearing our revenge. He will seek to kill us. Should he find us, he will slay all three of us. And he sent his son away, and Dinghavu, having received a good education from his father, applied himself diligently to learn all arts, becoming very skillful and wise. At that time the barber of King Digiti dwelt at Benares, and he saw the king, his former master, and, being of an avaricious nature, betrayed him to King Brahmadatta. When Brahmadatta, the king of Kasi, heard that the fugitive king of Kosala and his queen, unknown and in disguise, were living a quiet life in a potter's dwelling, he ordered them to be bound and executed, and the sheriff to whom the order was given seized King Digiti and led him to the place of execution. While the captive king was being led through the streets of Benares, he saw his son who had returned to visit his parents, and, careful not to betray the presence of his son, yet anxious to communicate to him his last advice, he cried, O Dinghavu, my son, be not far-sighted, be not near-sighted, for not by hatred is hatred appeased, hatred is appeased by not hatred only. The king and queen of Kosala were executed, but Dinghavu their son bought strong wine and made the guards drunk. When the night arrived, he laid the bodies of his parents upon a funeral pyre and burned them with all honors and religious rites. When King Brahmadatta heard of it, he became afraid, for he thought, Dinghavu, the son of King Digiti, is a wise youth and he will take revenge for the death of his parents. If he espies a favorable opportunity, he will assassinate me. Young Dinghavyu went to the forest and wept to his heart's content. Then he wiped his tears and returned to Benares. Hearing that assistants were wanted in the royal elephant's stable, he offered his services and was engaged by the master of the elephants. And it happened that the king heard a sweet voice ringing through the night and singing to the lute a beautiful song that gladdened his heart. And having inquired among his attendants who the singer might be, was told that the master of the elephants had in his service a young man of great accomplishments, and beloved by all his comrades. They said, "He is wont to sing to the lute, and he must have been the singer that gladdened the heart of the king." And the king summoned the young man before him and, being much pleased with Dinghavyu, gave him employment in the royal castle. Observing how wisely the youth acted, how modest he was and yet punctilious in the performance of his work, the king very soon gave him a position of trust. Now it came to pass that the king went hunting and became separated from his retinue, young Dinghavyu alone remaining with him. And the king, worn out from the hunt, laid his head in the lap of young Dinghavyu and slept. And Dinghavyu thought, "People will forgive great wrongs which they have suffered, but they will never be at ease about the wrongs which they themselves have done. They will persecute their victims to the bitter end. This King Brahmadatta has done us great injury. He robbed us of our kingdom and slew my father and my mother. He is now in my power." Thinking thus, he unsheathed his sword. Then Dinghavyu thought of the last words of his father: "Be not far-sighted, be not near-sighted. For not by hatred is hatred appeased. Hatred is appeased by not hatred alone." Thinking thus, he put his sword back into the sheath. The king became restless in his sleep and he awoke, and when the youth asked, "Why art thou frightened, O king?" he replied, "My sleep is always restless because I often dream that young Dinghavyu is coming upon me with his sword. While I lay here with my head in thy lap, I dreamed the dreadful dream again, and I awoke full of terror and alarm." Then the youth, laying his left hand upon the defenseless king's head and with his right hand drawing his sword, said, "I am Dinghavyu, the son of King Digiti, whom thou hast robbed of his kingdom and slain together with his queen, my mother. I know that men overcome the hatred entertained for wrongs which they have suffered much more easily than for the wrongs which they have done, and so I cannot expect that thou wilt take pity on me, but now a chance for revenge has come to me." The king, seeing that he was at the mercy of young Dinghavyu, raised his hands and said, "Grant me my life, my dear Dinghavyu, grant me my life. I shall be forever grateful to thee." And Dinghavyu said without bitterness or ill will, "How can I grant thee thy life, O king, since my life is endangered by thee? I do not mean to take thy life. It is thou, O king, who must grant me my life." And the king said, "Well, my dear Dinghavyu, then grant me my life, and I will grant thee thine." Thus, King Brahmadatta of Kasi and young Dinghavyu granted each other's life and took each other's hand and swore an oath not to do any harm to each other. And King Brahmadatta of Kasi said to young Dinghavu, why did thy father say to thee in the hour of his death, be not far-sighted, be not near-sighted, for hatred is not appeased by hatred. Hatred is appeased by not hatred alone. What did thy father mean by that? The youth replied, when my father, O king, in the hour of his death said, be not far-sighted, he meant, let not thy hatred go far. And when my father said, be not near-sighted, he meant, be not hasty to fall out with thy friends. And when he said, for not by hatred is hatred appeased, hatred is appeased by not hatred, he meant this, thou hast killed my father and mother, O king, and if I should deprive thee of thy life, then thy partisans in turn would take away my life, my partisans again would deprive thine of their lives. Thus by hatred, hatred would not be appeased. But now, O king, thou hast granted me my life, and I have granted thee thine, thus by not hatred hatred has been appeased. Then King Brahmadatta of Kasi thought, how wise is young Dinghavu that he understands in its full extent the meaning of what his father spoke concisely. And the king gave him back his father's kingdom and gave him his daughter in marriage. Having finished the story, the Blessed One said, brethren, yet are my lawful sons in the faith, begotten by the words of my mouth. Children ought not to trample underfoot the counsel given them by their father, do ye henceforth follow my admonitions. Then the bhikkhus met in conference, they discussed their differences in mutual goodwill, and the concord of the Sangha was re-established.